In a land where demons walk and shadows whisper, there was once a girl who didn't run. She faced the devil himself and tricked him. This is her story. The girl who tricked a demon. They say every 100 years he rises. The one with smoke for breath and teeth like broken promises. He doesn't kill with claws or fire. He kills with riddles. And he never loses, except once. So begins the tale of Kenna, the girl who dared to speak truth to shadows, and tricked a demon far beyond the mountains. Hidden between thorn-covered trees and forgotten trails, there lay the village of Aradon, a peaceful place by day. Children played in the red dust. Women wove patterns into baskets shaped like suns. Men sang to the fields, and laughter lived on the wind. But at night, the wind stopped. Doors were bolted. Fires were doused. No one whispered. Because at night, the curse remembered them. Every 100 years, Nyoka, the shadow demon, returned. No one knew his true shape. Some said he was made of smoke and lies. Others claimed he wore the skin of a man, but walked without casting a shadow. But everyone agreed on one thing: he plays a game. A game of riddles, and if you lose, you're never seen again. Generations ago, during a long famine, the village made a terrible bargain. They summoned Nyoka to bring rain and food. He did. The rivers flowed, the crops rose, the animals returned, but demons don't give. They trade Dot, and what Nyoka wanted was cleverness. He offered a deal, once every 100 years. The village must choose one soul, one brave soul, to enter the forest and play his game. A game of 3 truths and 1 lie. If the human could trick him, make him believe the lie was true, Nyoka would leave for another century. But if he found the lie, the soul was his to devour. He'd twist it into screams and send nightmares into every home. And so, every century. When the old clay drum cracked from age, the village knew it was time again. Kenna was different. While other girls played games and danced beneath the mango trees, she listened. To the elders, to the wind. 2 stories buried under silence. She was small, curious, sharp, dash-eyed. And when the warning came, a cracking of the ancestral drum and the sudden silence of birds, Kenna didn't run. She whispered to her grandmother, "I'll go." The old woman's eyes filled with tears. "You're just a child." "I'm cleverer than most," Kenna replied, "and demons love games." So do I. That night, a storm rolled in without warning. Not thunder, but wind, cold and dry. The sky turned the color of burnt leaves, and the village square filled with whispers no one wanted to hear. At the center of the village, the elders gathered in silence. They lit the sacred fire. The fire burned black. Kenna stepped forward, the youngest soul to ever volunteer. Gasps filled the crowd. Some cried, others turned away. One man shouted, "She die." But Kenna's voice was steady. "Maybe, but maybe I'll win." She wore a necklace of carved bone and carried her father's walking stick. Not for support, but for memory, before the elders could speak. A voice, low and layered, like many voices stacked together, echoed from the forest's edge. "Come, little liar, let us play." The wind shifted, the trees parted, and Kenna, barely 12, walked into the dark. The trees of the demon's forest were wrong. They didn't sway. They watched. The deeper Kenna walked, the colder it grew. The ground pulsed softly beneath her feet, like it was breathing. She followed. No path, she simply walked toward the voice that whispered her name in languages she didn't understand. And then, Hugh saw him, Nyoka. He wore a cloak made of silence and had eyes like dying stars. He didn't stand. He floated slightly above the ground, and when he smiled, his mouth was full of teeth that bent backward. "You brought no gift?" he asked. "I brought myself," she said. Then let's play. Nyoka circled her like smoke. We will each speak for things, he hissed. 3 truths. 1 lie. If I find your lie, I win. If I cannot, you go free. Kenna nodded, but in her mind, she was already building the game backward, stacking truths that sounded false and lies that felt warm. This was no longer just about courage. This was a war of words. Kenna stood before the demon Nyoka, her shadow stretching long and sharp across the cold forest floor. The rules had been spoken. 3 truths. 1 lie. If the demon found her lie, he'd consume her soul and seed nightmares through her village. If not, he'd vanish for another 100 years. Speak, child, Nyoka said, his voice slithering like oil. Tell me your 4. She took a breath. Kenna's voice was clear, deliberate. 1. I've never killed a living thing. 2. My mother once fed a snake honey. 3. I can sing to birds and they come. 4. I've eaten fire before. Nyoka tilted his head. His eyes dimmed, glowing faintly like coals starved of air. He rasped. They all sound like lies or truths. That is your trick. He floated in a slow circle, the forest dimming with each pass. A girl like you has surely killed an insect or 2. But it is the smallest truths that fool the proudest men. The snake and the honey. Strange, but possible. Fire, perhaps symbolic. Bird song, he hissed. Childish. The trees held their breath. Finally, he raised 1 clawed finger. The lie is the birds. You cannot summon them. Kenna smiled softly. Wrong. From the trees, a single bird black as pitch fluttered down and landed on her shoulder. Nyoka's smile curled into something sharper. 1 point. For you. Nyoka hovered higher now, his form twisting like smoke in boiling water. Now you listen, little liar, he hissed. 3 truths. 1 lie. Find mine. Or lose part of your soul. The wind grew cold. He spoke. 1. I was born from the mouth of a king. 2. I once danced inside a dying sun. 3. My brother is buried beneath your village. 4. I fear only silence. Kenna blinked. His words weren't riddles. They were madness. Poetry and darkness stitched together. But there was always truth hidden in the strangest sentences. She stepped closer to him. Her eyes narrowed. You were born from a king's mouth. Demons love metaphors. The sun dance. You enjoy making yourself sound powerful. A buried brother. Oddly, ordinary. But fear of silence, she said, circling him. That's not a demon's weakness. That's a human's. She raised her chin. The lie is silence. Nyoka's smile vanished. The forest groaned. He gave a slow, mocking clap. Very clever, child. 2 rounds, and you still stand. But his eyes darkened. You will not survive the next. The forest twisted around them, time bent. Trees screamed. 1 more, Nyoka growled. Let's see if you bleed truth or lie. Kenna's breath shook. She had prepared for this, crafted her final 4 statements before entering the forest. She spoke quickly, her voice tight. 1. I have never lied to my grandmother. 2. I do not know my real father's name. 3. I once saw a child die in their sleep. 4. I am not afraid of you. Nyoka's eyes flared. He didn't speak for a long time. He simply stared at her. You lie well, he said slowly, but you are afraid. I taste it in the air. Your pulse quickens when I draw near. Your hands tremble. Up. The lie is the 4th. Kenna smiled again. Wrong, the lie is the 1st. I have lied to my grandmother twice. The air shattered, lightning split the sky, no storm. Just rage, Nyoka howled, his scream shaking the trees. His body flickered between forms. A wolf made of ash, a man with no eyes, a beast with 10 arms. He surged toward her. "You tricked me." Kenna didn't flinch. She held out her charm, the carved piece of blackwood. Her grandmother gave her hand-whispered a single name. "Nyoka, by your name and your rules, you've lost." The moment his name echoed through the forest, everything changed. The wind reversed, the trees bowed. Nyoka's form bent backward, smoke tearing from his limbs. His scream became silent. His mouth gaped, but nothing came out. Kenna stepped forward. "Now, I speak your last truth." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a folded piece of Haidan old story etched in ink, written by the last challenger who died. "You were never playing to win. You were playing to forget your own name." Nyoka's form convulsed, and then he vanished. No fire, no scream, just a soft snap, like a story closing shut. The forest brightened, the air softened. Kenna turned. Walking out of the demon's forest alone, birds returned. The wind sighed behind her, where the demon once stood. Now only ash and a riddle carved into a tree. The truth is never enough, but sometimes it's everything. Kenna walked back into the village of Aroden, her feet bare, her spirit quiet. No one had expected to see her again. Not after entering the demon's forest. Not after challenging Nyoka, the devourer of minds. But there she was, and the sky was clear. The villagers gasped. Some cried. Others dropped to their knees in shock. Elder Ambali stepped forward, trembling. "Child, did you win?" Kenna said nothing. She simply opened her palm and showed them the piece of black. Asked the only thing that remained of the demon. The sacred clay drum in the village square, cracked for a century, let out a single clean tone. The curse was broken. Or so they thought. That night, as the village celebrated, Kenna sat quietly beside her grandmother's fire. The old woman didn't dance, didn't cheer. She stared into the flames like they whispered secrets only she could hear. "You didn't just defeat a demon, child," she said softly. "You woke something." Older Kenna tilted her head. "What do you mean?" Her grandmother lifted the blackwood charm Kenna had carried, the one she used to banish Nyoka. The charm was cracked. "He left you something?" the old woman whispered. "Not a curse, a question." Kenna frowned. "What question? What happens to truth when the lie dies?" That night, Kenna dreamt of Nyoka. Not in the forest, but in the village. He stood beside her bed, smiling, silent. His mouth sewn shut with thorns. But in her dream, he spoke without lips. "You won." But not all stories end in endings. Some begin again. She awoke, sweating, and in the dark corner of her hut, something moved at sunrise. A riddle appeared on the village walls, scratched into the mud like claw marks. "If I die with a truth, do I leave behind a lie?" The elders were terrified. Some said Nyoka had returned. Others blamed Kenna. But Kenna knew better. The demon was gone. But his prophecy remained. Days passed. The village slowly returned to normal, though the air felt heavier. One morning, a traveler came from the east. Hooded, silent, he walked straight to the center of the village and sat at the edge of the sacred drum. When asked his name, he only whispered, "I am the one she left behind." No one understood. Not until that night, the traveler built a fire in the forest clearing. Kenna followed him, her instincts sharp, her curiosity louder than her fear. She watched as he took out a scroll wrapped in snakeskin, marked with Nyoka's symbol. "This is the rest of the story," he said without turning. Nyoka wasn't the first demon. He was the last. Kenna stepped closer. Then who were the others? He looked up. His eyes were hollow. "They are waking. You killed the lock. Now, the door opens. That night, Kenna stood beneath the old fig tree, the one where elders whispered prayers when children were sick. She stared into the sky, but it no longer looked familiar. The stars had shifted. The birds had flown early and deep in the forest. Where no wind blew, a faint voice began to chant. 3 truths, 1 lie, she played. But who wrote the game? Kenna clenched her fists. She had tricked a demon. But now, she was part of something bigger, a game older than curses. And her next challenge might not ask for her mind, but for her soul. Kenna sat at the edge of the village, staring into the forest. She had outwitted Nyoka, broken the ancient curse, saved her people. But now, the shadows moved differently. They crept without wind. They bent around truths like wolves circling fire, because something had awakened. And not all demons come with horns. The stranger who called himself the one she left behind vanished the next morning. But in his place, Kenna found a symbol carved into the base of the sacred fig tree, a triangle of 3 eyes. And a cracked mouth. It pulsed with heat, and when she touched it, she saw visions, a massive temple, underground eyes watching from walls of bone, children whispering names that never existed, and at the center, a mouth with no face. Kenna staggered back, heart racing. Nyoka wasn't the game. He was the gatekeeper. Elder Umbali summoned Kenna to the ancestral hut. Inside, a circle of old men and women sat silently. In the center was a bowl filled with black sand. We thought Nyoka was the end, one elder rasped. He was only the test. Another spoke, her voice shaking. Before Nyoka, there were the forgotten ones. They were not demons. They were memories that people buried too deep. He told her of the first story, the one never told aloud. When humans first learned to speak, said Mabali, they told a lie to survive. That lie became a name, and that name became hunger. Determined to end the threat, Kenna ventured to the foot of Mt. Cog, where old maps showed a forbidden zone marked only by a single word. Silu, it meant unspoken. There, hidden under vines and rock, she found the entrance's stone mouth carved into the mountain's base. It wasn't just a cave. It breathed. She entered, and the air inside tasted like ink and forgotten. Lullabies. Torches lit themselves as she walked. The walls were lined with carvings of truths, turned against their speakers. She passed. A woman devoured for speaking love to the wrong spirit. A child burned for revealing a king's secret. Storyteller nailed to the floor for crafting a tale that made the dead. Remember who killed them, Matt. The heart of the temple was a circular chamber filled with scrolls, none written in ink. They were made of skin, etched in blood. Bound in silence, Kenna touched one, and the voice inside her mind spoke. You killed one lie. Now all lies unravel. The mouth is open, and it is hungry. She dropped the scroll, heart hammering. On the wall behind her, new writing appeared, dripping red as if freshly carved. Silence was a promise. You broke it. Suddenly, a voice hissed behind her. You think you're clever, but cleverness is only dangerous when forgotten. You brought back something even I feared. Kenna turned. Noka stood there, faint, transparent, not alive, not dead. You defeated me, child, but that made you marked. The mouth knows your name now, and it will never stop speaking it. Kenna ran out of the temple, through the trees, back into the world that now felt smaller. When she reached her village, the sky was red. Children pointed to the river, flowed backward. Women wept blood instead of tears. In the center of the square, the sacred drum had cracked again. But it hadn't been 100 years. Elder Mbali met her at the edge of the square, holding the charm she'd used to banish Nyoka. But it was different now. It pulsed, and a small mouth had formed on the wood, whispering, "You thought the story was about a girl who tricked a demon," he said. "But now the story is tricking you." Kenna closed her eyes. "Then it's time. I write the next chapter myself." Kenna stood before her village once more. The sky above was bleeding twilight. The river ran backwards. The sacred drum had cracked again. She had defeated Nyoka. But she had opened something far older, something not born of flesh or flame, but of forgotten words. "The mouth is waking," whispered her grandmother, "and it does not feed on souls. It feeds on truth." At dawn, the ground split open. A hole yawned beneath the sacred fig tree. Not a natural pit, but a perfect circle. No end, no bottom, just darkness that breathed. From within came voices not screaming or whispering, but telling. Endless stories, overlapping, too many to make sense of. A wife who betrayed her husband. A boy who lied to save his brother. A king who made a deal with the wind. A girl named Kenna. "It remembers us all," Kenna said, eyes wide. "It is us all." The elders gathered in terror. Crops wilted. Infants wouldn't cry. Every story ever told, ever forgotten, ever buried, had come alive. The mouth didn't want chaos. It wanted ownership. Every tale belonged to it, and it wanted Kenna's entire story. If she let it consume her, it would sleep again. If not, it would keep growing, swallowing stories, truths, and finally, the minds of the living. Kenna looked to her people. "If I give it myself," she asked, "will it end?" The wind answered in her voice, "Only if you give it the last story." That night, Kenna sat by the pit and carved her tale into bark. Her childhood, her grandmother's songs. Riddles, the lie she once told that saved her. The fear she still held. The truth she had learned. Cleverness is not the same as courage, but together they become power. When the final line was carved, she stood. "I give you my story," she whispered, "but not all of it." And she jumped into the mouth. The wind stopped. The voices ceased. The river flowed forward again. The drum healed. The fig tree blossomed. The mouth had closed, but it hadn't consumed Kenna. It had recorded her and buried her story into the world. Years passed. Children in Aroden no longer feared the forest. They sat in circles and told riddles, played truth games, honored a girl who once tricked a demon, and silenced something even darker. No statues of Kenna were built. No temples. Just a single line carved into the fig tree. She didn't tell the last story. She became it. And if you listen to the wind in Aroden now, it doesn't howl. It laughs. Thanks for watching. Hoped you liked it. If you watched till the end, please comment "end" so that we could understand you were with us till the end. As well as, please let us know where are you watching from. Before leaving, please hit the subscribe button. Comment your thought and share with your nearest and dearest one. See you in the next one. Until to the next one, stay happy. Goodbye.